My name's Gary Bromham. Obviously, I started originally as a tape op actually, or actually I started as a T-boy, and I grew up as basically an analog head. I started my career on an SSL, which is one of the reasons why I was so excited about when I first saw Record. Actually, whilst I worked in Trident as well, I walked in one day and there was this band, I'm going to give away how old I am now, called Queen actually, who were working in there. And they had this bloody great sampler sitting in the studio called a Fairlight. I don't know if any of you remember this. And I saw this device and actually used to spend sort of most of my, after I'd finished my sessions, working all night on this thing. Did a lot of sort of Fairlight programming for bands like Go West and Tears for Fears, those kind of bands. I have written with loads of kind of different people, including Björk when I worked up in Iceland, and Sheryl Crow. I also did a lot of, I know I don't look it now, I don't look very two-step to you now probably, but I also did a lot of the kind of late 90s, I don't know if you remember Lonyo, Summer of Love. I'll play it to you in a minute, and the Nightcrawlers. I also did the Nightcrawlers track as well. So I just want to talk a little bit about this guy actually as well, Balance, which is their first, if you like, flirtation with hardware. This is their basically their 2-in, 2-out audio device. It's also designed really well. I really like the way that it kind of sits on the desk. There's a separate headphone feed, or a separate headphone output, I should say, and it really does sound. It really does sound rather excellent. One of the other things which occurred to them when they were looking at designing this interface was that the fact that how many times have you recorded something and you've overloaded that signal inadvertently? I'm not saying you go out of your way to overload it, but you've kind of clipped it just in a couple of places and you go, well, you know, now what am I going to do about that? So, so what they came up with is this great system called ClipSafe on here. Turn this up. Probably see everywhere where I've kind of hit that, if you like, the if I've gone over 0 dB, so in other words I've clipped the actual audio, it's that I can actually see quite clearly there where I've clipped any of those. So as soon as I click that, I've now healed the distorted part. Now, it actually doesn't replace the whole piece of audio. The way that it works is it just looks for the clips. If I just undo that again, it just looks for the areas where you've clipped the audio and it replaces them with the versions, if you like, or the version of the recording that was under 0 dB, that is unclipped. And then what it does, but it actually only replaces the parts that have actually distorted in there, which I think is quite cool. I've always liked the kind of open architecture of Reason, the way that I could just cable anything anywhere and come up with sort of mad results with it. But really, probably the turning point for me was probably this guy, which, as some of you will probably know, actually we're always told at Propellerheads now, this is modelled on a well-known British console. The thing which really excited me about this was the fact that the workflow was exactly what I'd been used to, and I couldn't believe actually that nobody up to that point had actually bothered to simulate a mixing environment in software. But for me, whenever I looked at the mixer in Logic or Pro Tools or anything, it always was just really dull and just didn't inspire me at all, which is probably why I just carried on mixing on a hardware mixing desk, because I thought, but actually this was the first time I saw this and I thought, wow, if that sounds as good as it looks, then, you know, we're onto a winner here. And actually the sound of it for me now has become far more important than actually the functionality of it. I don't know if you're aware, I mean, probably some of you, if you've switched over to Reason 6 now, that essentially what Reason 6 is the marrying of Reason 5 and Record 1.5. Propellerheads, for their own reasons, decided that that Record, for one reason or another, didn't work for them, and effectively the brand name is in fact Reason. So we're now, all of those devices like Neptune, and now the new devices, Pulverizer, the Echo and Alligator, and now it's all in one package. Yeah. One of the problems for me with Propellerheads and Reason is it has this stigma of just only being useful for making dance music, which I'm really trying to get away from for them. I mean, obviously it's fantastic for making dance music, but I also want to show that it's great for making any genre of music. This is a song called Outside In, which I'm working on with a band. And I purposely wanted to do something completely different in terms of sonically. So this is just like a pop track. So so that's just a little of the track, which I purposely did from start to finish in here just to see what it was capable of. And actually, XFM have just played it as their track of the week, actually, so something must be right here. So what I'm going to do is I just want to take you through some of the things. I'm probably going to concentrate more heavily on the mixer now for this little session. One of the things which kind of, for me, is always lacking in software, as I already said to you, was the fact that the master section of my mix is always, you know, when you set the fader at unity gain at 0 dB and your kind of nervous disposition is to start messing around with the master fader, unless of course you've got a controller like I've got here with balance. One of the neat things for me was the fact that we've got a dedicated monitor section in here. So in other words, there's a control room output on this mixer, and you can route any one of these sources in the mixer to that control room output. At the moment, by default, I'm monitoring the master output. Okay. About this signal path here, it's really good because we've got the dynamics and EQ section, and by default, dynamics, EQ, and insert is the order of this channel. But it's quite easy for me. I mean, what I would normally do is I'd probably put the insert first before the dynamics and the EQ. Okay. So it's easy for me to move the order of those. It's also, you know, you get that situation with a lead vocal sometimes where do you have the people always say to me, do you put the compressor first or the EQ first? And the answer is there isn't really a set rule, but if I want to compress something, then I probably want to correct it first before I compress it. Otherwise it will just bring out all of the nasty. Anything that I don't like about it will be far worse once I've compressed it. Okay. I have now talked enough. What I'm going to do is actually just maybe take some questions, if there are any questions from anyone with... Yeah.
When you're actually working on a track, sort of entirely within Record or Reason,
yeah.
Do you tend to leave the mastering effects turned on while you're mixing, or do you bring them, or do you mix actually, and then bring them in afterwards?
That's a really good question. I tend to, with the limiter, I put it on usually about halfway through, yeah. Which sounds like a cop-out. I like to start without it, but as you know, when you send a track to somebody, if you send a track to them and it's too quiet, or it's quieter than the one they played before, I mean, there's a separate discussion really on the loudness war in music, isn't there?
It's kind of a horrible juggling act, really. Because
yeah.
You want to preserve the dynamics of your mix, but at the same time,
you don't want it to be too quiet.
As loud as possible.
It's interesting that a lot of people are there's a big backlash against that now, isn't there? A big backlash because people are starting for ages. People have got loudness and dynamics very confused with each other, and they've got nothing to do with each other, you know. And people think, oh well, if it's as loud, then it's dynamic. Well, of course it's not. If it's loud, then it isn't dynamic. Okay, thanks very much for coming along, everyone, and go out and buy Reason 6 and a balance interface. There you go. Thanks very much. Cheers.